Yo, what's up, everybody? Professor V here, and in this lecture series, we will be discussing the relatively new field of psychology, positive psychology. Positive psychology is the study of successful functioning, including one's own strengths, virtues, and talents, which enable individuals and communities to flourish. This is the Chapter 1 lecture for the course Introduction to Positive Psychology. Let's go. Let's begin with an analogy. Imagine psychology as a large college campus. For much of its history, the most important building on that campus was the emergency clinic. The clinic mattered tremendously. It helped people in crises. It studied pain, trauma, depression, anxiety, abnormal behavior, and the many ways human beings can suffer. Without that building, the campus would be incomplete. But now, imagine walking around that same campus and realizing there are other buildings too. There is a fitness center where people strengthen what is already healthy. There's a library where students build wisdom and curiosity. There is a garden where people restore themselves and connect with others. There is a career center where people think about purpose, values, and contribution. There is an art studio where people experience flow and creativity. Positive psychology is not saying we should close the emergency clinic. That would be careless. Instead, positive psychology asks, why did we spend so much time studying only what goes wrong? What about what goes right? What about strength, meaning, resilience, gratitude, happiness, engagement, and flourishing? Now, that is the central shift of this course. Positive psychology does not deny suffering. It does not tell people to smile through pain or pretend that everything is fine. Instead, it studies what helps individuals and communities function well, even in a world where stress, loss, and difficulty are real. It asks, what makes life worth living? What helps people flourish? What strength allows us to recover, grow, connect, and contribute? Positive psychology emerged as a major movement in the late 1990s. One of the key figures associated with this movement is Martin Seligman, a psychologist who served as president of the American Psychological Association. In 1998, during his presidential address to the APA convention, Seligman helped formally introduce positive psychology as a distinct area of study. To understand why this was important, we need to think about what psychology had mostly focused on before then. Historically, psychology was heavily concerned with mental illness, dysfunction, distress, and maladaptive behavior. That focus makes sense. Human suffering is serious, and psychology made enormous contributions by studying conditions such as depression and anxiety, trauma, addiction, and schizophrenia. But Seligman and other positive psychologists argued that psychology had become somewhat lopsided. If we only study what goes wrong, we develop an incomplete picture of human life. Knowing how to reduce anxiety is important, but it does not automatically tell us how to build courage. Knowing how to treat depression matters, but it does not fully explain meaning, gratitude, love, wisdom, creativity, or purpose. Positive psychology shifts part of the scientific lens towards strengths, virtues, talents, and conditions that allow people and communities to flourish. Core topics include happiness, resilience, well being, flow, engagement, meaning, optimism, gratitude, and character strengths. Notice an important distinction here. Positive psychology is not the same thing as generic positive thinking. It is not simply telling people think happy thoughts and everything will work out. It is also not the same as popular self help claims that success can be magically attracted by belief alone. Positive psychology is meant to be empirical. That means it is based on research, measurements, evidence, and theory. So when we study happiness in this course, we are not just asking people to be cheerful. We are asking scientific questions. How do we define happiness? How do we measure it? What predicts it? Can it be changed? Are there limits to it? Does it work the same way across cultures? How does it relate to mental illness, relationships, motivation, work, health, and morality? This brings us to one of the first major concepts in the chapter, defining happiness. At first, happiness sounds simple. We use the word constantly. I'm happy. That made me happy. I just want to be happy. But scientifically, happiness is not just one thing. Researchers often use the term subjective well-being, or SWB, as a broader label for different forms of happiness. There are three major components of subjective well-being. The first is high life satisfaction. This is the thinking part of happiness. It involves evaluating your life and deciding whether it is going well. A person with high life satisfaction might say, overall, I am proud of the life I am building, or my life is close to what I want it to be. The second component is frequent positive feelings. This is the emotional presence of pleasant experiences such as joy, gratitude, excitement, calm, affection, interest, or amusement. The third component is infrequent negative feelings. This does not mean never feeling bad. That would be unrealistic and probably unhealthy. It means that intense or frequent negative emotions such as anger, sadness, fear, stress, resentment, or worry do not dominate a person's daily life. These three components can overlap, but they are not identical. For example, imagine an elderly person who feels deeply satisfied with her life. She raised a family, built meaningful friendships, contributed to her community, and feels that she lived according to her values. Her life satisfaction may be very high, but because of physical pain, limited mobility, or loneliness after losing loved ones, she may not experience frequent emotions day to day. Now, imagine a college student who has a lot of fun. They go out with friends, enjoy social events, laugh often, and have many pleasant experiences. But privately, they feel directionless. They worry they are wasting time, avoiding responsibilities, or not living in line with their deeper goals. This student may have frequent positive feelings, but low life satisfaction. Or imagine someone who enjoys life, but also experiences a lot of stress and anger or worry. That person may have both positive and negative feelings in high amounts. The key point is that happiness is not a single button you press. It is more like a soundboard with multiple sliders. Life satisfaction is one slider, positive emotion is another, negative emotion is another. A person can be high on one and low on another. That means there is no one-size-fits-all happiness formula. Different people may need to work on different parts of subjective well-being. This is one reason positive psychology can be personally useful. It helps us ask better questions instead of asking only, am I happy? We might ask, am I satisfied with the direction of my life? Do I experience moments of joy or connection? Are negative emotions taking up too much room? Which parts of well-being needs attention? Now let's connect this to mental health. A common assumption is that mental health simply means not having a mental illness. But the chapter emphasizes that this is too simple. The absence of mental illness does not automatically mean the presence of well-being. Think of it this way. If your phone battery is not dead, that does not mean it is fully charged. It might be at 3%, glowing with the desperation of a tiny electric candle. Technically, it is still alive, but it is not thriving. Human beings can be similar. A person may not meet the criteria for a psychological disorder, but they may still feel empty, stagnant, disengaged, or emotionally flat. That is not flourishing. That is just surviving. The book presents 4 categories of mental health based on 2 dimensions: subjective well being and mental illness. The first category is flourishing. Flourishing involves high subjective well being and low mental illness. A flourishing person is not necessarily happy every second. Instead, they generally experience life as meaningful, emotionally rich, connected, and manageable. They may have fulfilling relationships, a sense of purpose, and the ability to function effectively. For example, imagine a student who feels connected to friends and family, enjoys their major, manages stress reasonably well, and feels excited about future goals. They still have bad days, they still get tired, they still face challenges, but overall, they are functioning well and experiencing a strong sense of well-being. The opposite category is floundering. Floundering involves low well-being and high psychological distress or mental illness. This might describe someone who recently lost a job and feels overwhelmed, anxious, depressed, isolated, and directionless. They are not only struggling emotionally, but they also lack a strong sense of meaning, connection, and functioning. The third category is struggling. This one is especially important because it challenges stereotypes. Struggling refers to someone with high mental illness or significant psychological challenges, but who still maintains some aspects of high subjective well-being. For example, someone may live with depression or anxiety but also have strong family support, meaningful friendships, spiritual grounding, creative outlets, or moments of joy. They may be dealing with real symptoms, but their life is not defined only by those symptoms. Positive psychology helps to see the whole person, not just the diagnosis. The fourth category is languishing. Languishing involves low well-being but low mental illness. This is the blah state. A person may not feel clinically depressed or anxious, but they feel stagnant, empty, disconnected, or unmotivated. They might go through the motions: wake up, work, scroll, sleep, repeat. Nothing is dramatically wrong, but nothing feels especially alive either. This category is powerful because many people recognize it. Languishing is not always loud. It does not always announce itself with a crisis. Sometimes it feels like emotional wallpaper, dull, gray, and just always in the background. Understanding these 4 categories helps us avoid a narrow view of mental health. The goal is not simply to reduce symptoms. The larger goal is to support flourishing. Let's discuss 2 majors of well-being: hedonic and eudaimonic. Hedonic well-being is centered on pleasure, enjoyment, comfort, and positive feelings. It is about feeling good. Examples include eating your favorite desserts, listening to music you love, buying something exciting, resting after a long day, watching a funny show, or spending a relaxed evening with friends. Happiness matters. Pleasure is not shallow by default. A good meal, a warm conversation, a beautiful song, or a moment of laughter can be part of a healthy life. Positive emotions can restore us, connect us, and make life more enjoyable. But hedonic happiness is often temporary. The pleasure of a dessert fades. The excitement of a new purchase wears off. The fun of a weekend event may not create long-term fulfillment by itself. Eudaimonic well-being is different. It is rooted in meaning, purpose, personal growth, authenticity, values, and contribution. It is about living well, not just feeling good. Examples include volunteering at a shelter, mentoring someone, working towards a degree, developing a skill, caring for a family member, practicing mindfulness, pursuing a meaningful career, or making sacrifices for a long-term goal. Eudaimonic happiness may not always feel pleasant in the moment. Think about marathon runners. During the race, many runners experience pain, exhaustion, discomfort. That is not very hedonic. But afterwards, they may feel pride, accomplishment, identity, and meaning. That is eudaimonic well-being. College is another example. Studying for an exam at midnight may not feel pleasurable. Writing a difficult paper may not produce immediate joy. But earning a degree, mastering a subject, and building a future can provide a deep sense of meaning and growth. Here's another everyday contrast. Eating junk food. It may increase hedonic happiness in the moment. It tastes good, it is convenient, and it brings quick pleasure. But if it conflicts with your long-term health goals, it may lower eudaimonic well-being. On the other hand, exercising may not always feel wonderful at the start, but it can support a deeper sense of vitality, discipline, and self-respect. The point is not that hedonic happiness is bad and eudaimonic happiness is good. Both matter. A meaningful life without joy can become heavy. A pleasurable life without meaning can become hollow. A well-rounded life often includes both. Now let's ask another major question from the readings. Do we actually know what makes us happy? Most people assume they know. We think, if I had more money, I can buy a better car, a nicer apartment, have a perfect relationship, have fewer responsibilities, then I would be happy. Some of those things can matter. Financial stability, safety, and supportive relationships are important, but humans are not always accurate happiness predictors. The chapter discusses research showing that college students have increasingly rated being financially well off as essential, often more than developing a meaningful philosophy of life. This is understandable. Students are often worried about tuition, jobs, debt, rent, and future security. Money matters because life is stressful when basic needs are not met. But positive psychology asks us to be careful. Money is not the same as meaning. Wealth does not guarantee fulfillment. Many people have financial success but remain lonely, anxious, dissatisfied, or disconnected from purpose. On the other hand, many people with modest income experience strong relationships, gratitude, purpose, and joy. A useful way to think about this is that money can remove certain forms of suffering, especially when it helps meet basic needs. But after a point, money may not automatically build meaning and connection, gratitude, character, or purpose. Those require different psychological ingredients. This leads us to a practical question. Can we train ourselves to be happier? The answer is yes, but with some important caution. The readings notes that happiness interventions can be oversimplified because happiness has multiple components. The right strategy depends on the person and the problem. One person might need stronger relationships. Another might need better emotional regulation. Another might need professional help for depression or anxiety. Another might need more purpose, not more pleasure. For example, telling a lonely person to keep a gratitude journal may help somewhat, but it may not fully address their need for connection. Telling someone with severe depression to look on the bright side is not only insufficient, it can be harmful if it prevents them from seeking professional care. So happiness can be trained, but not with magic recipes. One example discussed in the readings is mindfulness training. Mindfulness involves being aware of the present moment, including thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations, and surroundings without immediately judging them. Instead of being dragged around by every thought, mindfulness teaches us to observe our experience more clearly. For example, imagine a student before an exam thinking, I'm going to fail. I'm terrible at this. Everyone else understands it better than I do. Without mindfulness, that thought spiral can become emotional quicksand. With mindfulness, the student might notice, I'm having anxious thoughts right now. My body feels tense. I can breathe, return to the present, and take the next step. Mindfulness does not erase stress. It changes the relationship to stress. The reading describes research by Kushlev and colleagues showing that mindfulness training produced modest benefits for subjective well-being and mental health. Participants reported reductions in symptoms of depression, anxiety, and stress, and they also took fewer sick days compared to those who did not participate in mindfulness training. The word modest matters. In science, we should be careful not to oversell. Mindfulness can help, but it is not a universal cure. It is one tool in the larger toolbox of well-being. Now we need to address a question that often comes up in positive psychology. Can we be too happy? And the answer is yes, or more precisely, positivity can be measured. One danger is toxic positivity. Toxic positivity happens when positive thinking is overemphasized in a way that dismisses real pain. For example, telling someone after a loss, everything happens for a reason, just stay positive, may sound encouraging, but it can also invalidate grief. It may make the person feel guilty for being sad or isolated because their real emotions are being pushed away. Negative emotions are not always enemies. Fear can warn us of danger. Anger can alert us to injustice. Sadness can signal loss and invite support. Guilt can motivate repair. Anxiety can prepare us for challenges. Of course, negative emotions can become overwhelming or harmful, but they also provide information. A healthy emotional life is not a life with only positive feelings. It is a life where emotions are understood, regulated, and used wisely. Another issue is that positive moods can sometimes lead to less careful thinking. When people feel good, they may rely more on shortcuts or heuristics. Sometimes that is useful, but sometimes it can lead to poor decisions or biased judgments. For example, if we are in an overly upbeat mood, we might ignore warning signs, underestimate risks, or rely on stereotypes rather than thinking carefully. Now let's look towards the future of positive psychology. The field has grown tremendously over the past 2 decades. Researchers have studied happiness, well-being, meaning, gratitude, optimism, resilience, positive emotions, strengths, and flourishing in many areas of life. Positive psychology also has practical career applications. In clinical and counseling psychology, professionals may integrate positive psychology interventions with traditional therapy. This could include helping clients identify strengths, build gratitude, increase resilience, improve relationships, or reconnect with purpose. Importantly, this does not replace treatments for mental illness. It can complement it. In coaching, positive psychology can help people clarify values, set meaningful goals, improve motivation, and develop strengths. Life coaches and executive coaches may use positive principles to help clients grow personally and professionally. In education, positive psychology can support students, teachers, and administrators by promoting resilience, engagement, belonging, motivation, and well-being. For example, a school might use strength-based activities, gratitude practices, or belonging interventions to create a healthier learning environment. In public health and workplace wellness, positive psychology can inform programs that promote stress reduction, life satisfaction, social connection, and overall well being. Organizations may use these principles to improve employee engagement, prevent burnouts, and support healthier cultures. For students in this course, the value of positive psychology is not only career related, it is also personal. Throughout the semester, you will ask questions that matter beyond the classroom. What kind of life am I building? What gives my life meaning? What strengths do I bring to challenges? What relationships nourish me? How do I respond to stress? What does flourishing look like for me? And how might it differ from someone else's version? Before we close, let's bring everything back to the opening analogy. If psychology is a campus, traditional psychology built a powerful emergency clinic. We need that clinic. People suffer, and science should help reduce suffering. But positive psychology invites us to walk the rest of the campus. It asks us to visit the garden of gratitude, the gym of resilience, the library of wisdom, the studio of creativity, the career center of purpose, and the commons where relationships and community are built. Human beings are not only problems to be solved, we are also capacities to be cultivated. In the next video, we will move into chapter 2, which focuses on emotion, motivation, and the nature of well-being. We will examine universal emotions and how researchers classify emotional experience. We will look at how well-being can be measured through subjective reports, experience sampling, day reconstruction, biological indicators, and objective life conditions. We will also discuss biological and genetic correlates of happiness, including brain systems related to reward and the difference between state and trait well-being. Credit for this open educational research content in this lecture goes to the University of Houston downtown professor, Dr. Kit Cho. Thank you for creating this great resource, and thank you for watching. And as you move into the next chapter, keep this question in mind. Are emotions just reactions to life, or are they also tools that help shape the life we build? So, until then, take care and stay curious.